Today's talk is a continuation of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, and I'm going to be starting with chapter 4, which is titled Instructions on Impermanence, the Remedy for Attachment to this Life. Trungpa Rinpoche starts off by saying that impermanence and death are unpleasant to think about. But on the other side, it's very important to contemplate them, and that there's great benefit from this contemplation. And to expand that, it's of great benefit to contemplate suffering in general, that denial is not a good approach to death, that the knowledge about impermanence, and especially the impermanence of our body, leads to wanting to get out of this endless cycle of suffering. And that then from that wanting to escape then comes the method or how to do it, and then eventually succeeding in escaping from samsara. So, and I will add to this my own commentary, and that is that I know or have known a number of people, and this might be your experience too, that died and their affairs were totally a mess, and the people that were left behind had to deal with there being no will, no really knowledge of what the person that died really wanted, and so on and so forth, and maybe even fighting among siblings about who gets what. And so it really is important, both in terms of samsara as well as in terms of our spiritual practice and our path, to contemplate impermanence and realize that it is the way samsara works. So the book talks about there being subtle aspects of impermanence and gross aspects of impermanence. And basically, the subtle is short-term impermanence and the gross is long-term. And then the second aspect of this chapter is the method of meditation. And this is meditating and contemplating so that you can discover that all is impermanent and that we can't do anything about it, that suffering is caused by attachment to impermanent things, thinking that they will last. And then that from there, the next step is to eliminate attachment, and as a result, eliminate suffering. And the third section, the concluding section or the final section of this chapter, is the benefits, which is being free from clinging and attachment to the concerns of this ordinary life. And the biographies of the great masters of the past, whether they be the Kagyu masters, the Siddhas in India, and so forth, that they give us great examples of what is possible and how to let go of the concerns of this life. So to go through the classification of impermanence now in more detail, that was kind of an overview, that we cling to thinking that things are going to last, or at least as long as we want them to last or need them to last. And of course, this is delusion. This is very unrealistic, that nothing lasts forever, even the earth and the universe, and that things can change dramatically from one moment to the next. And because of that, change can be a great cause of suffering. The greater the clinging, the greater the suffering. When we were young, we thought our bodies were invincible, that we would never have to get old and suffer death and so forth. And in fact, as I said that, an old rock and roll song came to mind that was popular probably in the late 60s. It was by Mary Hopkins. It was a Russian, supposedly a Russian folk song, and it was called "Those Were the Days, My Friend, We Thought They'd Never End." Yada. Yeah, so you remember that. I see a smile. And it's true that I think another line of that, we fight and always win. Yeah, that's the way it is in samsara, that there is so much denial of all of this. And right now, the earth is going through all kinds of signs of climate warming, obvious signs. Yet there are a lot of people out there that feel that all of this is a hoax. Uh, the fact that the earth will end at some point of time, again, people don't think about that. They think about the earth as somehow or another always being there. Uh, but uh, that isn't the way things are. That I can't tell you how many hundreds of millions of years it was, but an asteroid or a comet or something struck the Earth and wiped out the dinosaurs. And there's no reason why that couldn't happen, let's say within the next 10 years, next, next year. We don't know. So there are all kinds of things that could happen to the Earth that would make it impossible for us to continue living on the Earth as humans. Maybe cockroaches, but not humans. So uh, this is an example of gross impermanence. Subtle impermanence uh, will happen. And that's just observing that every day the sun rises and in the evening it sets. And then there's night in between the sunset and the sunrise, and day in between the sunrise and the sunset. And we're about to end July and start August. And when August ends, September, and then it starts to cool down. And soon we're going to be shoveling snow again. And that is what happens. Uh, that if we just look around, this is going on all the time. When you go to the grocery store, part of it, if you go to the fresh produce section, you'll see what things are in season, or you will at least if they've got things there 12 months of the year, you can look at where they came from and see what season that part of the world is in. Uh, so, and flowers, there's beautiful flowers out here where I live, but they won't last. So it's good to observe the world around us and just see how it is changing constantly. Again, one of my favorite sayings is that because of impermanence, maintenance is permanent. If you have a car, you have to put gasoline in it. You have to change the oil. Sometimes you have to put new brake pads on it, new struts, new tires, perhaps repair some damage from a deer collision, or whatever, or a collision with another car, and so forth. That things are constantly changing and degrading, and repairs and maintenance is either that or throwing it out or collecting it. And if we collected everything that we brought home with us, uh, after 50 years or more, we would be overwhelmed with it. We would have a dump. So the method for meditating on impermanence is this. This is the second point, that this has to do with our own life and our personal experiences. That just think about how our bodies are changing and are aging, and that we really could die at any point. It was actually the death of my best friend, and within a few years, a number of other friends and my grandmother and so forth, that really got me seriously interested in Buddhism, because I started thinking about how uh, it could have been me, and it could be me, that uh, when someone else that we know dies in an accident or dies from disease or something, that could easily have been us. That there's no reason why it couldn't have been us. And just to go over things a little bit here in my own personal experience, it was my best friend that was killed in an accident in Menominee, killed basically instantly, that eventually brought me to Buddhism, and that caused me to think a lot, to contemplate a lot about impermanence, and I didn't need Buddhist teachings to think about impermanence and contemplate it. And then in, let's see, 85, 89, I went out to KTD for the first time. And when I drove out there, and when I get out there, they tell me at the desk, call this number. I call this number, and a friend of mine back home was killed in an accident. He had actually helped me um, in some aspects of putting up the building that is now the shrine room out here. And and that was in late June. And then, of course, I come home, and in October, another man that I knew out here that I was more distant from, but still friends with, and he was part of the community, he was killed in an airplane, commercial airplane, uh, possibly a terrorist bomb, but the plane exploded in midair over Tegucigalpa, and it was send dental records down so we can identify who he is. And when I went into 3-year retreat, I made up a will and chose a man to be the executor. And Soon after the retreat began, he developed Lou Gehrig's disease, and a year later he was dead. And on and on and on and on and on. There was a time where I was thinking that it was dangerous to be my friend. Uh, Thank you all for being alive, staying alive, and disproving that. So anyway, if we look at our lives in terms of precious human existence, and then combine it with this meditation on impermanence, that we realize that we have the best possible opportunity, but it is fleeting. And do not squander it, that we can benefit ourselves best and benefit others best by practicing and using our time wisely. To see our time as precious and not ordinary. If we look at time as being ordinary, then we'll squander it. And if we see that it is precious, we will realize we can't afford to waste it. Trungpa Rinpoche says, think that an hour is golden, and to continue to meditate on death. And that it is a mistake to want time to pass quickly. That an example that I'm going to use is that I, again, used to work as a prison chaplain, and there is a phrase that is used by prisoners, and it's doing time. And basically what that means is that they're just sitting there letting the clock, the time run out, the clock run out, so that they can get released. And really, a lot of activity in samsara is just doing time. There was actually a book that was written for prisoners, but not by a Buddhist. But the title of the book is We're All Doing Time. And we want to avoid doing time, just filling up our day with activity that might be interesting, that might reduce boredom, that might actually accomplish things, but is it really necessary? I had lunch with a longtime friend of mine who I hadn't seen for something like 18 years. And he had just bought you might say, a summer place here. And I went over and visited him and his wife. And what he was doing is he had a large lot. It was a city lot, but a large lot. And he's my age. And what he was doing is he was a member of a group of people that are interested in botany. And he was trying to uproot and kill all the invasive species on this plot of land and plant native species. That's what he is doing, and he's doing it, let's put it this way, he's spending an incredible amount of time. And on top of that, he has to protect everything from the deer. So he's got fences around things. And I guess that's how he plans on spending his time until he dies. And then when he dies, someone else will own the property, and what he has done will be meaningless. This is what we do not want to do. We want to use impermanence to motivate us to do something, to escape. to use this precious time in a way that is most valuable. And he includes in this section also to contemplate how we're wasting our, you might say, our mental energy and our mental time with thoughts of anger. That if we're angry at somebody, if we want something bad to happen to them, to just remember that that person is going to die anyway. And so why spend so much time thinking about them and what they did and so forth? And now this did surprise me a little bit here. But I'm going to go over this, and I'm actually going to read the quote here. But he says it's even a waste of time to make life pleasant for other people, family, and friends. That trying to give them temporary happiness is only temporary happiness. And just like you, they need permanent happiness. And that what you can do best for them is to attain permanent happiness. And then you are more able to benefit them. So this is the quote. It's on page 64 of my copy of the book. It is better to practice meditation than to spend all our time trying to make things nice for our family and friends. Of course, it is good to think about helping others and to make them happy. This is, in fact, part of a bodhisattva's commitment. It is a bodhisattva's responsibility to help other beings. But the method is wrong, spending so much time and effort on useless priorities. So instead of wasting so much precious time on little things, we should instead use the time and energy to work towards ultimate happiness, which will really benefit our loved ones and ourselves. So to add a little bit to that, just like us, the suffering other beings experience comes from their mind, and that helping them with worldly things is only temporary and with limited effect and success. If a person isn't happy before they get what they want, they won't be happy after they get it, at least not for long. So it is Dharma practice that moves us along the path. And we do that so that we were able to ease suffering in a true sense. Now, this doesn't mean ignoring other people, family members, and so forth, but you don't have to get caught up in, for lack of a better word, the days of our lives. That if your family is like my family, they're not enlightened, they're not bodhisattvas any more than I am, and that there's a lot of stuff that it's best to just let it go. Let it go. I remember again, working with my parents um, in their old age. And when I say old age, mom lived to 96 and dad lived to 94. And just observing dad in his old age, there was a lot of things that if he would have done, he would have been happier and he probably would have even lived longer. But if I would have tried to help him, it would have just made things worse, and I would have been wasting my time. And I did do prayers at Tonglen, and I visited them frequently, shorter visits usually. So that was enough to let them know that I cared, and it did cheer them up. But it was, I, they were in actually ended up in a memory care unit. And in a way, that was enough. I could have been there much, much more, but then I would have diminished my Lama activities and my practice, and that was important. And I think all of us can think about situations where maybe we would have wanted to make a difference, maybe we tried to make a difference. And maybe occasionally we did make a significant difference, but most of the time, um, a lot of what we did had no lasting effect on the people that we wanted to help. So here is a quote. Again, this is in the book, but it's from Shantideva. He does not mention the source, but I'm assuming it is the Bodhisattva's way of life. Quote, there is no need to waste so much time on clinging and hatred because in the end, all of that has to go. Instead, we should use our precious time in order to reach ultimate happiness. We will have to leave everything behind when we go. Therefore, it is absolutely pointless to cling to anything. So we have to realize that it is unsustainable, you might say, to handle things in our lives as if they were permanent and eternal. That the way to make life meaningful is to direct our attention to transcending suffering, to transcend problems and fear of impermanence. So finally, he goes into the benefits that arise from meditating on impermanence. And first of all, it is transforming this intellectual understanding of impermanence to a heart understanding of impermanence. So in the short term, it shows us how to use our life, how to spend our times, what our goals should be, our vision. It gives us some insight on how to break away from this endless cycling in samsara, life after life after life. It helps us see at a heart level that desire, anger, jealousy, pride, ignorance, and so forth, these are all fleeting and they just cause suffering. And that we can, little by little, let go of them and have them influence us less and less over time. Another benefit is that this increases our diligence in practice. Trungpa Rinpoche compares it to like a friend helping one to be diligent, that you can look at this meditation on impermanence as a friend that is encouraging diligence. And diligence is joyful exertion. In other words, to exert ourselves in practice. And instead of feeling like, oh, this is a duty, I have to do it. Oh, it's time again to do it today. More like a fear of joy about being able to practice, to have been introduced to these practices in Buddhism, and wanting to do it willingly rather than seeing it as a duty. And finally, the ultimate, of course, is that this leads to realizing the true nature of things, that things are impermanent, and to not deny or suppress, fantasize about this, or thinking that the way to escape impermanence is an altered state or reach a zone, but to just realize this is the way things are. And if I don't buy into it, I don't suffer. Buy into what I mean is attachment and aversion and so on and so forth. And so that is the end of that chapter. The question is Buddhism impermanent? And the answer is, of course, it is, because it came into being with Shakyamuni Buddha. And the teachings are that there are going to be times where the teachings flourish and thrive. And then there are going to be times of, you could say, like a dark age where the teachings diminish, get corrupted, and eventually disappear. And then a new Buddha will arise and revive and refresh the teachings. But this is in terms of the relative. In terms of the ultimate, enlightened mind has always been there. Dorje Chang, Vajradhara, is the primordial Buddha who has always been enlightened, never confused, and never traveled the path. And so from that respect, from that viewpoint of the ultimate, yeah, it can't disappear and it can't appear. A little further information about, is Buddhism permanent or impermanent? And that is the highest practice, Vajrayana practice in Buddhism, is the Kala Chakra. The wheel of time is what this means. And in the Kala Chakra teachings, it talks about a dark age where a ruthless tyrant will take over the entire planet. And at that time, the kingdom of Shambhala will mystically appear, and the occupants of that Shambhala kingdom will do battle with this vicious tyrant and succeed in overthrowing the tyrant. Now, there are a lot of different levels to this story. One level is that it is all, you might say, an indicative meaning. The tyrant is ego. And it is said that if you've taken a Kala Chakra empowerment, then when this time comes for the citizens of Shambhala to you might say, do battle with ego, you will be on the side of Shambhala. But again, this wheel of time has in it the idea of there are times when the Dharma is strong, vibrant, and times where it is not. In fact, I might be mispronouncing this, but there is the term Kali Yuga, which means basically a dark age where the teachings are corrupted and disappearing. So this is part of it. And Shakyamuni is considered the fourth Buddha of this fortunate aeon, that there were previous Buddhas where the teachings died out. The next question is about being attached to a peace. And I thought we were traveling the path to attain peace. And both are true, that peace can happen as we travel the path. But if we become attached to it, it becomes a problem. Attachment is always a problem. So instead of trying to attain peace, we already have it. It's already, that potential is already there. That's part of our Buddha nature, our primordial wisdom. And so what the methods are is to remove the things that are getting in the way of us experiencing that peace. And attachment is one of the things that gets in the way. We just have to let it flow, you might say. And with attachment, we want to freeze the flow. The problem is that we try to solidify things and want to attain a particular state, a state of peace, a state of happiness, a state of let's say, a higher consciousness, a zone, whatever. But what we're actually doing is removing what is blocking this. We have all of these qualities already, and we are blocking them. And one way to block them is to be attached to them. From the relative point of view, every moment is fresh and new. And every moment has peace, even in the midst of chaos. And but if we attach to it, we're no longer in the present. Now we're trying to create something or hold on to something. And it's like, how do you hold on to, we had rain here this morning, a nice, beautiful rain shower. And I can't hold on to it. It was a wonderful experience. It was cool. It was so cool that it didn't feel humid. And obviously, if it's raining out, it's humid. But we just have to let go, and the peace will be there if we don't have the obstacles to it present, if we don't have what's blocking it present. You could say at one level, and this could be argued, but when the war ends, you've got peace. There are two ways of looking at the path. One is, well, that's the Tibetan word for Buddha is actually two syllables. One means to eliminate, the other is to blossom. And so the path is, first of all, one of eliminating all the obstacles. And attachment is a huge one. And purification then fits in this part of the name Buddha, Sanjay, to eliminate. So we do a lot of purification of our karma, our habitual patterns, our habitual ways of thinking, and all of our attachments and aversions and so forth. And then the blossoming part is the qualities of the loving kindness, compassion, humility, wisdom, and so forth. All of the six bodhisattva qualities, all of these blossom. And so there is some effort that is put into generosity, self-discipline, patience, diligence, meditative concentration, and wisdom. We do things to develop those qualities. The primordial wisdom just, you might say, spontaneously appears as things are eliminated and these qualities are developed. But again, the love and compassion of a Buddha is compared with the radiance of a sun. And that is that the sun doesn't choose, I am going to radiate light over here, but I'm not going to do it over there. The sun can't help it, has, you might say, no control. It just radiates. And this is the way a fully enlightened Buddha is with these qualities, is that the love and the compassion radiating from a Buddha or a high-level bodhisattva, there's no choice in the matter at all. It just happens. The question revolved around nowness, and both in terms of meditation and in post-meditation, like enjoying a flower or enjoying some kind of activity. And when we meditate, try to, you might say, be in the present by following the breath. That's what's happening right now. We're breathing. Not the breath we just had, but what we're doing right now. And of course, the breathing is constantly moving, changing in and out. The beginning of in, the end of in, the beginning of out, the middle of out, the end of out. Now it's the beginning of in. You know, it's not constant. I mean, it's not solid. It's a flow. And so being in the moment is that when you find that you are thinking, whether it's thinking about the breath or thinking about something that happened to you 30 years ago that you're upset about, or worrying about something that could happen next month, you come back to the breath, which is the present. This is the technique. And of course, most of the time we're not present. We're somewhere else, past or future. But the same thing is with our daily lives. The more that we can bring our mind back to what we're doing right now, whether it be gardening, smelling the flowers, cooking, taking a shower, reading a book, driving a car. You know, when we can be in the present. And by the way, driving a car, you want to be more than in the present. You want to be aware of the bigger picture too. I don't recommend meditating on emptiness when you're driving a car. Uh, but I did hear a story about Kempo Sokram Gyamso, so I'll pass this on to you. This was from a man that worked as his translator when he was staying over in France, perhaps in Paris. I don't know what city, but there was an amusement park in the area and they had bumper cars. And Kempo Sokram Gyamso was kind of a crazy wisdom, Kempo. And the translator said that sometimes just out of nowhere, he would say, let's go ride the bumper cars. And so they would, and he would be in a hurry. His robes blowing in the wind as they're going down to the amusement park, get their tickets, get on the bumper cars. And he would tell his translator, now meditate on emptiness. And then when they started, the translator said that nobody ever hit him. Nobody ever bumped into him when he was meditating on emptiness. I don't know what to make of that story, but I thought I'd throw that in. But don't do that when you drive. But really, when we're doing anything during the day, the way to come back to now is to focus on what you're doing with your hands, with your mind, things in the environment, sounds, smells, taste, whatever is happening, let go of the thoughts, the emotions and everything, and just come right back to what's actually going on right now. And just like when you're doing sitting meditation, you're not going to stay there very long and you'll get distracted and but it's a practice. It's a practice, and this is definitely doable.